Up next, Authentically Detroit welcomes guest host Chase Cantrell, plus Akil Talley, Lanay Gilbert-Williams, and Malik Yakini of the Detroit People's Food Co-op. Join for a sneak peek into how they are redefining Detroit's food ecosystem. But first, this week's hot takes from the Detroit Free Press and USA Today. Detroit credit rating upgraded 2 notches, reaches its investment grade for the first time since 2009. And as homeless crisis grows, states and cities are turning to voters for affordable housing. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show.
Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from Cass Corridor at the WDET studios. We're a content partner to BridgeDetroit.com. I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
And I'm Chase Cantrell.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. Last week, I was out in L.A., and this week, Orlando was out in sunny Miami. So I have the honor of introducing our newest Authentically Detroit co-host, Chase Cantrell.
What up, though?
Welcome, Chase. We're also joined in the studio by Akil Talley, Lanay Gilbert-Williams, and Malik Yakini of the Detroit People's Food Co-op, who are here to tell us all about the importance of their mission ahead of the grand opening a month from today on May 1st. Welcome to Authentically Detroit, everyone.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Peace. What up, though?
Can we correct something right off the bat?
Yes.
The opening is May 1st, but the grand opening, the big hoopla with the bands and speakers and food demonstrations, food trucks, and you can see Lanay in person, all that's May 18th.
All right. Well, I'm going to put that on my calendar. That sounds like a lot of fun.
You'll be there.
And I'm a member, right? Yeah. So, Chase, I'm so excited to have Chase as a friend, a long-term friend of the podcast, and it's been a minute. But we are really excited to have him join the rotation so Orlando and I are allowed to take vacation without the podcast going off air. So, Chase, can you reintroduce yourself to our listeners? Take a moment for that.
Sure. Hello, Detroit. I'm Chase Cantrell. I am a native Detroiter, born and raised on the west side, although I love the east side. I am the executive director of an organization in Detroit called Building Community Value. We help to provide resources and tools to Detroiters who want to do real estate development in neighborhoods. So if you're that kind of resident who wants to build power with your neighbors and buy that vacant house across the street or a commercial property on the corridor, come to Building Community Value. That's what we do. I'm a recovering lawyer. So, practiced law for 7 years before I shifted to the nonprofit space. I am a policy junkie, which is why I'm here on Authentically Detroit, and a good friend of Orlando and Donna. So I'd love to be here.
Yeah. So, real talk, when I have a real legal question I want to ask somebody, I'm in Chase's inbox. You know I am.
That's right.
And so we have that kind of relationship where we help, I think iron sharpens iron. And so we spend a lot of time really trying to evaluate what's going on in the city. So it's exciting to have you join Charity Dean in this space when Orlando and I are going to be absent. But anyway, how is everybody today? Chase, how are you?
I'm doing great. So when I stepped away from law to step into this new place that I am, I have curated a life where I only get to work with people that I love. So today has been a day of meetings from the beginning, but all with thought partners and wonderful, beautiful humans. So it's been a great day.
Lanay?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day in the D.
Okay. Kil?
I feel awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
And Malik?
I'm thankful and grateful for every day.
So today is actually a really somber day for me. So I'm in all black. I wear all black a lot, but I'm in all black because we are memorializing my uncle, Ronald McIntyre. Families talk about matriarchs a lot, right? but Ronald was our patriarch in our family. He was the backbone, one of those men who was always there. And in the back of my mind, no matter what I was going through, he was there. When I had to leave an abusive marriage, he was there. I stayed with him, and I knew I would be safe. When my mother divorced my father, he was there, and we knew we would be safe. And he was there for so many people. I mean, I like to say it was just me, but he was just one of those men who was there. And he wasn't there giving us a lot of advice or anything like that. You see him in the backyard fixing the car or on the roof fixing the gutters, but he was there in a real way, making sure that everybody felt safe and secure. So losing him is really, really a lot for me. But I'm glad to be here because I have this. First of all, I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to be having, the guests we're going to be having. It's really very strange because I really got introduced to Malik Yakini when he memorialized my brother. He performed the libations at his funeral, and I learned so much about my own brother from Malik on that day. And he has a way of talking about things. And I remember many of the things he said. Sometimes people talk and you just forget what they tell you. And there's some people who talk and it sticks. And so I'm really excited to have you here, to be here with my friend Chase. And so, it's time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's headlines in the city of Detroit. So we're going to start with one. Detroit's credit rating is upgraded 2 notches and reaches investment grade for the first time since 2009. And this is by Dana Afana in the Detroit Free Press. In March, Moody's Investor Service upgraded Detroit's bond rating by 2 notches, bringing the city to a level it has not reached since 2009 before it filed for bankruptcy. Detroit's bond rating has now reached investment grade. A double upgrade is rare. Mayor Mike Duggan said at a Monday announcement celebrating alongside dozens of department heads. Higher ratings mean governments pay lower costs to borrow money for various investments and upgrades across the city. Duggan praised Detroit's chief financial officers from last decade, budget directors, city council, and city departments that manage with financial constraints. The mayor it's hard for me to read this. The mayor passed out bottles of black ink to symbolize Detroit's return to investment grade credit rating, getting the city out of red ink, which signifies financial losses. No one would have predicted Detroit's returning to investment grade in less than a decade, Duggan said. I was really pleased to see Moody's in their report cite 10 years of strong financial management of the city is the reason for this, as well as the fact that the home values of Detroit have doubled in the last 5 years. Duggan also emphasized the city is in a strong financial position because of income tax revenues exceeding expectations, lower unemployment rates, development projects, and city council's approval of those projects. The upgrade from BA1 to BAA2 reflects Moody's expectation that the city will continue bolstering its financial resiliency and maintain the track record of solid operating performance as seen in the past several years, according to the announcement from Moody's. The upgrade further assumes that Detroit's economic and tax-based growth will continue through the 2024 and 2025 fiscal years. The city's bond rating, now at BAA2, was graded at CAA3 in June 2013, 1 month before Detroit filed for municipal bankruptcy. The upgrade allows Detroit to open its bonds to a wider market and lower interest rates and invest in infrastructure, neighborhood, and public service improvements. Duggan expects the city to jump another level next year. Chase, what say you?
Well, the way that I start to think about this is many people in Detroit have had bad credit, right? So when I left my job in 2016 to start a nonprofit, which I don't recommend anybody do without some deep savings, I ran my credit for a good solid 5 to 7 years. So it's a sigh of relief, right? When you finally get that credit rating that says, congratulations, your credit score is up to 750 or whatever. So cities are no different. But if you actually read the report, the media has only been focusing on all the positive things. But the report actually goes into things that we're all familiar with. It talks about declining population. It talks about unemployment. It talks about high poverty rates. It talks about all of the things that are still plaguing the city of Detroit, and it categorizes them as social risks. So the people are the social risks that the credit report looks to, but that doesn't impact the score. They say that the social risks don't actually matter all that much in terms of these upgrades. So when they say that we anticipate another upgrade next year, it's that these same kinds of things that are making Detroiters suffer still is not going to impact the credit rating of the city. So that's what I keep seeing year after year. Donna, every time you and I read these reports and talk about them, it's, yeah, they mention these things that we talk about all the time, but what impact does it really have?
Right. I mean, if you look at increasing home values, the quickest way to increase home values is for people with low values to lose their homes or to have fewer low-value homes on the market.
To demolish them.
The quickest way to, increase average incomes is to push poor people out. Schools did it, right? Remember when schools really focused on test scores? And schools had all of these policies designed to push out struggling kids back to traditional public schools to increase the scores that they had. Because dealing with poor folks, you're not going to fix it overnight. And you're certainly not going to fix what's happening with poor folks. And we're the poorest city in the nation, right? Big city in the nation. You're not going to fix what's happening with poor folks by fixing up downtown. You're going to have to invest in them. And housing is such a big issue inside of our community. It's kind of crazy to me. And going back to your credit rating analogy, one of the things that occurs to me is if I wanted to increase my credit rating quickly, there might be things that I skip over in order to do that, right? Like I might not go to the doctor and get preventive health care if I have to spend a lot of money because that would push me further into debt. So I'm going to spend all of my money paying down my credit cards or doing the kinds of things that are celebrated by credit card rating agencies because they don't look at our full credit profile. They look at those things they have decided are important. And most of those things are the things that benefit banks.
For example, when you want to raise your credit score, they actually want you to have more credit lines, right? They want you to have credit cards. They want you to have a diverse portfolio of debt. They want you to take on more debt. So it's pushing you towards these negative consequences to actually have a positive score. And Moody's does the same thing for cities, right? It's pushing you towards these negative outcomes to support corporations, big development, all the things that we're seeing happening in the city of Detroit. Moody's has been doing this for over 100 years. They've been doing this since 1918, and it has real impact on cities.
And it's not just Moody's. When you look at financialization, which is a framework that this falls in, when you look at what's happening across the world, and you look at the impact of the International Monetary Fund on the policies and programs in Africa, in African nations, in Caribbean nations, in other places that are considered the developing world that are dependent on the World Bank for reasons that we don't have time to talk about right now. But when you look at these dependencies and the fact that there's people who depend on borrowing, like cities do right now, because there's not enough income coming in from taxes to support cities. So you got to borrow in order to just pay. Like aren't there like general service bonds that are just responsible for helping us pay our bills?
That's
and
right.
then you have some bonds that are responsible for special projects like demolition.
Including the $250 million bond that the city of Detroit, that residents who vote did approve, but it's mainly for demolition. We are continuing to strip away the fabric of our neighborhoods.
Yeah. And so it's important to understand that the kinds of things that average Detroiters complain about, like to Detroits, like the buildup of downtown at the expense of neighborhoods, all of that stuff is stuff that Moody's celebrates. And right now, Moody's has so much power that cities actually map public policy to please Moody's, more so than they map it to please voters. And so it's important that voters get our power back, and our needs and our interests and our priorities are at least as important as Moody's. But one of the other wild pie in the sky ideas I have is that we begin educating Moody's, because Moody's doesn't know. And I don't know anybody who talks to Moody's or who Moody's comes out to interview. There is an absence of information. And the final thing I'll say about this is that, sustainability is not sustainable. If you continue losing population in neighborhoods while building up downtown, the city is not sustainable. And sustainability requires the inclusive social well-being of people inside of a community. If Moody's doesn't know what that well-being looks like, then there are risks that are hidden from them, even as they have said that there's some social risk. They don't really understand the dimension of the risk or how to solve them. So I think we in the community have got to do a better job educating those people who lead us. What do they call it? But managing upwards, right? To make sure that our voices and our needs and our concerns rise to the top of the agenda of our city policy. Any thoughts, other guests? If not, we'll move on. Malik, come on.
I've got a thought. My thought is that capitalism stinks. I'll start with that. And that personally, I don't think there's any salvation for black people within the context of capitalism. Now, of course, capitalism is not going to fade away next week or 5 years from now. But I think for those of us who are looking to build power and self-determination for black people for the long term, that our long-term strategy has to be undermining and getting rid of capitalism. And, you know, all the reasons that you kind of mentioned but said we don't really have time to talk about, you know, when you're talking about Africa and the World Bank and the IMF right. and all that, the whole international monetary system is based on colonialism. It's based on exploitation. It will never benefit people in the developing world. It will never benefit black people in this country. So we can try to make modicums of improvement within it. But in the long term, if we're serious about liberation, we need to be looking at what happens post-capitalism. Other than that, I don't have anything to say about it.
Oh, you know, you said it all, right? And I think the other thing that's important is that we've got to educate people about why it stinks, because we've been raised to believe that communism and socialism stink. And so we have to be re-educated. We have to allow ourselves to understand what the problems are. You know, I teach this class on urban sustainability at Columbia University. And so the more I read, the more I get into the issues, and especially like the food issue. We're going to talk about this, but it's like, Lord have mercy. The more I read about food, the more I wanted to learn about food. So I started buying books and investing and understanding exactly what's wrong with our food policy. And I definitely want you to touch on this on the international level. So with that, I'm going to move on. Let me make sure that I'm within our time constraints, because Orlando is not here to keep me in check, but we have a few more minutes to talk about as the homeless crisis grows, states and cities are turning to voters for affordable housing. And I'm not going to go through all of this because I do want to have a robust conversation about your work, but I do want to point out that more money is needed to turn construction plans into a reality. And in many cases, residents must approve tax revenue increases to foot the bill for new housing. Everybody knows there's a homelessness crisis, and it's growing. I just came back from LA, as I mentioned at the start of the show, and seeing people all over sleeping in tents is really disturbing. It's much worse than anything you can see in Detroit, because in Detroit they hide in vacants, right? So we don't see them. But in LA, you actually see people on the streets in these tents. People know exactly what needs to be done, but voters don't want to see tax increases because they believe that tax increases undermine their autonomy and their freedoms, their personal freedoms, which is an all-American thing. So, Chase, what are your thoughts about how do you correlate this issue around taxation with the bond rating?
I mean, my first thought is that the reason that people don't want to see their taxes raised for affordable housing is they think that affordable housing is for the other, right? They don't see the benefit to them in their communities. So if when they're thinking about affordable housing, they're thinking about black folk, they're thinking about brown folk, they're thinking about low-income individuals, right? They're not thinking about the folks who actually need it, which are teachers, public servants, all kinds of people who are serving our communities need affordable housing in all of our cities, including Detroit. But people have a vision of who that person is that is not anyone that they want to be in association with. So that's one. But two, it's also, this is an abrogation of the duty of the federal government, right? We have seen since it started with Nixon, and it's only gotten worse since, deepened with Reagan, and even our Democratic presidents haven't done anything significant about this. States and cities can't do this alone. The reason that states and cities are trying to raise taxes is because we're not getting enough money from the federal government to build housing. And the federal government has left states and cities just in the lurch. Right. So we're trying to create a Band-Aid where we have the solution. The money is there at the federal level. It's just not distributed to the places that it needs to be.
Right. I mean, the money is there. I want to push back against what I think is the narrative. I get what you're saying about teachers and firefighters and everything like that. But we live in a world where you have to be a teacher to matter, or you have to be a firefighter to matter. Now, during COVID-19, that ended for a minute because we started talking about essential workers and that person who cleaned places and that person who was working at the grocery store. All of a sudden, wait a minute, what about them too? But we also have a huge informal labor market of people who just can't function or don't have entry into the labor market. And housing is a human right. It shouldn't be based on whether or not you are a person who is acceptable in the eyes of our sort of capitalistic thinking about who has worth. And so we live in this world where we actually have to say things like, a teacher may be homeless before people care. It's like a homeless person who's just homeless. Well, we don't know if they really matter yet. And that really hurts my consciousness, because I think it hurts it because, it could be a relative that we have. It could be somebody that we love. It could be us one day. Right. But even if it isn't us, those are still somebody that somebody loved. And they're sleeping on the streets. And it's horrible. So I think that it really does start at the federal level, but, we have trickle-down policies at the state and city level. We give away a whole lot of money to corporations here. We spend a whole lot of money on policing here. We have military spending at the federal level and police spending at the state level. And at some point, at every level of society, we have decided these are our priorities, because that's what a budget is your priorities. Any thoughts? Any additional thoughts before we talk about you guys and your work?
Well, just
okay, go on.
After you.
No, go ahead.
Akil.
I was just going to uphold what Baba was talking about a little bit earlier with spending so much money on, war and trillions of dollars that we've thrown away, conquering other people, mostly in black and brown countries. So, yeah.
And I always have a similar response. So if you're only looking at the solutions within the context of what the current system kind of says is reliable or is allowable, we'll come to certain kind of conclusions. But again, I think we have to think outside of that box and think about how we have a fundamental shift in power and a fundamental shift in wealth in American society to really, reach the kind of equity that people often talk about.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to close out this discussion and start talking about the Detroit People's Food Co-op.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
Okay. We are back with Akil Talley, Lanay Gilbert, and Malik Yakini. And before we talk about you guys, I know Chase had a final comment, and then I had a final comment, and then we're going to pivot to talk about your work.
So I was just going to mention that last year in October, the city of Detroit put out what the media called was like a groundbreaking report. But it was a report that was necessary. It wasn't groundbreaking. But we actually started to count the unhoused population in the city of Detroit. 8,500 people, which is a huge, huge undercount, right? They were looking at the number of people who actually show up in shelters, right? Not the people who we don't know, like you said, people who are being housed in vacant houses throughout the city. So, I mean, this is a problem not just on the coasts, right? Not just in LA, Seattle, Portland, but it's a problem here, and we haven't found solutions for it, right? We are still, again, like we just talked about the bond rating, right? We're still allocating resources to areas of the city that don't respond to a problem like the unhoused population.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to find a solution to it, right? Because it's not profitable. And in a capitalistic economy, if it's not profitable, it doesn't work. And it's worse now because through financialization, there used to be a time where we believed in public housing and low-income housing. But right now, if it does not benefit investors, if I can't make money on what you're doing, then it doesn't make sense anymore. And that's where, I have some real concerns. But I also wanted to point out, because you pointed out earlier, I would love to see what the biggest exports of the U.S. are to the world, because I think that weapons and war have to be some of our greatest exports in the world. We send so much weaponry. I mean, billions, you can't even keep count. We're sending 30 billion here and 20 billion here and 15 billion here, and that makes so much sense. And then you say, you know what, we need to build up every house in the city of Detroit so people are living in decent housing. And say, oh no, that would cost $1 billion. I'm like, that's just one. Just imagine if you multiplied that to every city. We could do it. We choose not to. And we just say, well, we cannot imagine letting these people, starve and these people are harmed. But really, all of our foreign policy, in my opinion, is rooted in one thing, and that's dominance. We want to dominate the planet, and we send money to places and weapons to places that will help us in our game of dominance. So it's like, Game of Thrones, but we don't want to see ourselves in that way. Anyway, do want to spend a lot of time talking about you guys because, I believe in the whole theory of change what you can, and we're not fixing any of this. But what I really love about the work that Malik and now Akil and Lanay are doing is that you guys are coming up with alternatives to existing systems within a system that we know is broken. So I really wanted to talk about food sovereignty because it's such an exciting topic for me now that I understand it. And nobody tells it better than Malik.
So I want to first comment on some things I heard you say, because I'm very careful when I use the term we, because I don't see myself as part of the we that's exploiting countries around the world. That's the United States government. Is that the government that takes my taxes? Yes, but I don't identify with that we. And Malcolm X talked about this about 1963 or so.
I agree with you, but let me tell you something.
All right.
In November, as I was looking at the atrocities unfolding in Gaza, I woke up one morning and I cried because there was nothing I could do to stop my federal tax dollars from going there. And so although I don't choose this, if the rest of the world does not look at us as innocent, and I'm not saying I view myself as complicit, but I feel as though there's really no way to separate myself from this cause because of that. And so I'm not disagreeing with you. This is not my choice. But also I feel as though if I could say I don't spend my tax dollars on this, I would. Because it hurts to know that every time I earn money, somebody is helped, and I know that they don't need me, but you understand what I'm saying? I feel like part of a machine that is harming people. And it reminds me of people who were in the, in the South, in the Confederate States, who might have said, you know what, I don't own anybody who is enslaved. But if you're part of a system that benefits from or contributes to an economy that is based in that, you can't fully separate yourself out, and so you have to fight it. And that's the way I see it.
I appreciate that. I don't see it like that. I'm not using we to identify with the United States government personally. I don't argue with you if that's what you want to do. But also, I think on an international level, I think other governments have recognized the disparity that exists in the United States and have many times singled out black people for special treatment because they realize that we're not really part of the system that's creating this havoc throughout the world. And in fact, the havoc is being created on us as well. So minor point, and clearly it won't stop us from working together. I'm just saying I don't identify.
No, I get your point, and
okay,
I
cool.
appreciate it.
And I appreciate your point.
I'm speaking from a perspective of guilt. And one day I'll have to talk about my grandmother and her role in one of those other governments, because my grandmother in the 1930s was very much engaged with the Japanese government, which was actually singling us out in the city of Detroit. So that's a whole nother story. But anyway, go on.
No, I was finished. And, this is what this is for. There's no right or wrong perspective, but we have dialogue and, put different views out there. But Black food sovereignty, let's talk about that. So I'll start with saying that I'm executive director of the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network. And we initiated what is now the Detroit People's Food Co-op. And we initiated working on it in 2010. And so we were and are concerned about several things. We're concerned about the general state of black people in this country. And our organization is an anti-capitalist organization. As I mentioned earlier, that's just not my personal view, but our organization has the view that capitalism is a system which is terrible for human beings and for the planet, and that whatever we're working on in the short term, in the long term, we need to be looking at how we undermine this system that exploits people throughout the world. So one of the consequences of black people living in an almost colonized situation inside of America is that we don't control the essential elements that are needed for life in our community. Typically, those are controlled by other ethnic groups that come into our community. And that's not by happenstance. Kind of through history and policy, as you said earlier, these things happen. We know, for example, in Detroit, that the Black Business District in Black Bottom was destroyed when I-75 came through. But the same thing happened to Black business districts throughout the country. And so there was the intentional destruction of Black business districts, making Black communities more vulnerable for other ethnic groups who have a greater history of entrepreneurship to come in and extract great profits from our community. So that's true in all realms. All the things that we need to survive, we're getting from outside of our community, and wealth leaves our community every time we get those. The same is true in the food realm. So in Detroit, which it continues to be, I say, the blackest city in North America, recent data suggests that perhaps Memphis has a higher percentage of Black people than Detroit. I'm going to examine that data, but in the meantime, I'm still claiming Detroit being the blackest city in North America. But in a city of 645,000 people or so, 80% or so of whom are Black, there at this point are only 2 Black-owned grocery stores that are both relatively small stores, the Neighborhood Grocery on the east side and Linwood Fresh, I think it's called, on Linwood and Glendale. And so, while I commend the owners of those stores, the need is so much larger than those 2 stores. So just having a way to control a percentage of the retail dollar that we spend on food is important. That's an important step of Black food sovereignty. But really, food sovereignty is controlling the whole process. So we're trying to control from the seed to the production, to the distribution, the processing, the retail sale. We want to control the whole process. And at every point in that process, some dollars exchange hands. Typically, those dollars leave our community. We want to capture those and circulate those within our community. And so food sovereignty is really a condition that exists when a people are able to shape and define the food system that provides their food, and also to reap the financial benefits from the money that they spend in the food system.
So one of the things I've been also hearing about or reading about is the importance of protecting soil, for example, from monocropping. Help me, from
monocropping.
Okay,
yeah, so,
I got that
so
right.
In industrial farming, people plant, most farmers plant corn and soybeans, and so that's called monocropping, when you plant one crop.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So monocropping, which depletes the soil of nutrients. I've also read about the whole issue of controlling the land on which food is farmed, and the fact that so many people are leasing land from these same conglomerates that are controlling the seed and the packaging and deciding and determining what gets grown. And also that people don't get to eat food or grow food that is nourishing to them and is culturally appropriate to them. Can you talk about that also in the context of the Detroit Food Sovereignty Network?
Sure. So we're very concerned about land. In fact, land is the fundamental issue when it comes to producing food. And again, because we live in a capitalist society, first of all, this whole notion of land ownership is both a capitalist notion and it's a Eurocentric notion. The people who came here and colonized what we currently call the United States of America came from England, Spain, and France, all of which were former feudal societies who had evolved into mercantilism and then eventually capitalism. But the people who came here and colonized America came with this idea that came from feudal societies that if you're a rich person, that you can enclose the commons, that you can own the land, and that you can charge people to live on the land. The whole idea, frankly, is ludicrous. And again, in the long term, as we're looking at how we create justice and equity in the world, I would suggest that looking at how we get rid of this idea of private property ownership is an important part of creating equity. Who gives somebody the right to own an island, for example?
Right.
Who do you petition to get that, or for that matter, any piece of land, right? So the whole concept is bankrupt. Now, of course, we have to participate in it in the current time period because of the society that we live in. But as we're forging a vision for the future, that this idea of private land ownership is a surefire way to creating greater inequality.
Absolutely. I mean, I before we move on from that, I just want to talk about that because there are people who live in nations where multinational corporations control all of the arable land. And, so that land control, starves people. That land control impoverishes people. And does all kinds of terrible things. I agree with you around ownership, and thank you for calling that out, because I think a lot of times we don't think about that. And the connection between land and food is super important, Chase.
I want to stay on the same topic. So I'm curious about how the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network, I keep saying security.
Yeah, we used to be. We changed in September.
I'm glad you changed it. Mm-hmm. How you were able to acquire land in the city of Detroit, right? Like in participating in that system, how difficult was it? What was that fight like? Because I'm sure it was a fight. And just how were you able to do that over the years?
Well, so we have two projects. One, D-Town Farm, which we farm on 7 acres of land inside Rouge Park, and we have what's called a license agreement with the city of Detroit. So we don't have ownership of it. The city of Detroit claims they own it. And, so that's what the paper says, and we have an agreement to use that. But it was a long ordeal, and I don't really want to get into all the details now. It involves Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick and some of his staff members and some of the things that were happening around that time period. It's a long, complex story. But the bottom line, in 2010, we were able to get a license agreement with the city, and then we have a new agreement that is in the city law department, which I think will be going to the city council soon, which is a new 20-year agreement for the use of the land. But the other project is the Detroit Food Commons, and so we were able to purchase land on Woodward and Euclid in order to build this building that I'm sure Lanay and Akil are going to talk about, and the parking lot. And so that was actually an easier deal once we got the money. And, of course, you have to have the money to purchase the land. But we had some cooperation, actually, from former city council president Brenda Jones, who had seen me out speaking about the Detroit People's Food Co-op somewhere. And unbeknownst to me, talked to Arthur Jemison, who was the head of housing revitalization at the time, and told him, I want to see this project happen, work with them to make it happen. Long story short, as a result of that, the city of Detroit made available to us the parcel on Woodward and Euclid where the actual building has been built. That was in the inventory of the Detroit Building Authority. And then the 9 or so parcels that we purchased for the parking lot we purchased from the Detroit Land Bank Authority, which handles the formerly residential properties. There were also 2 private properties in the middle of the parking lot's footprint that a speculator from New York owned. And frankly, he stuck us up. We had to pay a very large price for those properties because he was just sitting on them knowing that development is coming in that area, trying to wait for the highest bidder. And so because it was in the middle of our footprint, we pretty much had to pay him what he asked for. We got stuck up, but, that's how this game works, I guess.
So one quick follow-up. For D-Town Farms, when that does go before city council, for our listeners, what would you want them to do? Do you want people to show up to support? Would there be a campaign of some sort?
No, I don't think. There's no real opposition. The city is with it. I think the city in some ways sees D-Town Farm as a feather in its cap, and so there's no opposition. I don't think we need to rally the troops around this. There's other things we need to rally the troops around, but not that.
There was a time when you did, though, right?
When we did.
When you did have to rally the troops.
Not so much around that. Not so much around that issue. There's other issues we've rallied troops around, and we'll continue to rally troops, I'm sure.
Well, what are some of those issues, right quick, before we go to break?
Well, John Hant's purchase of something like 18 parcels of land from the city of Detroit, we thought was a horrible deal for multiple reasons. And for those who might not know what I'm talking about, I think it was in 2013 or so, John Hant's, a wealthy developer who lives on the east side of Indian Village, wanted to purchase 1,800 parcels of city-owned land to do what he was first calling Hant's Farm, and he claimed it was going to be the largest urban farm in the world and spent all kind of money on publicity, and it was all over the internet. That, of course, never happened. Then he morphed into what is called Hant's Woodlands, where he said he was going to plant trees on these properties. And so the city sold the land to Hant's at what amounted to 8 cents per square foot, and the most harmful part of the agreement was that it gives John Hant's first right of refusal for any properties within a mile radius of the properties that he purchased, which goes all the way to the river. And we all know that the most valuable properties in any city is the riverfront properties. And so, we think that any deal that gives white men in particular greater control over land, which we think is one of the fundamental problems in the world today, And I know some people are going to say, oh, he's being racist or whatever. I mean, but this is just history. People of European descent have dominated the planet, have dominated land ownership, And we think that any scheme that continues that is a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that my organization was engaged in that conversation before I got there. So,
yeah, I recall that.
You recall that, I'm certain.
I think some people in your organization were supportive.
Yeah, but yes, they were. Not myself.
No, I know.
So not myself, because I wasn't there yet. And in fact, when I got there, they stopped working with us because they didn't see me as being somebody they should work with. So we have a coalition, and they stepped off the coalition gently and never gave us a dime, and that's okay, because you want to watch who your friends are and who you're allied with. And so all of this is memorialized in a documentary, Land Grab, where you were very clear about your opposition and others are not. What we're seeing right now is profiteering off of that land. And we're seeing him taking this land that he got from the city that he said he was trying to create scarcity to increase value. He's taking it to urban forums all over the nation and trying to secure, to make money off of it. And this is not something that was in his prospectus. Had he said that's what he wanted to do, I would have trusted him more. Because this tree stuff doesn't make any sense, and the trees aren't even
If
cute.
you go back and look at the interviews at that time, that's exactly what we said was going to happen.
You did.
We said it was speculation, and that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely you did. And you were absolutely right. And, the challenge is, of course, people look at land values increasing, but land values increasing when wages for poor black people are not increasing or average black people are not increasing is always going to be a problem. We're going to go to our final break, and then we're going to bring Akil and Lanay into the conversation.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
With the Detroit People's Food Cup, and I want to bring Akil and Lanay into the conversation. So, Lanay, you're the president of the food bank, right?
Yes.
And so not the food bank, the food co-op. I apologize.
That's okay.
Can you talk about the food co-op, what it is, what it's doing, and all of the good stuff that people need to know?
Oh, definitely. So the food co-op is a Black-led, community-owned grocery store in the city of Detroit. That is joining the fight for Black food sovereignty. So I want to say, although the co-op was envisioned by the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network in being community-owned and kind of being a baby in Detroit, it's a baby in that fight. And so in being community-owned, our member owners are 21 and up and Michiganders, not just Detroiters. So that involves a lot of different people from different areas in Michigan, a lot of different areas in Detroit. But being Black-led adds just a whole nother layer to it. So getting member owners to understand, and it's something we'll be working on over time, to understand what Black food sovereignty is, understand the importance of being Black-led, and gaining the experience of what it's like for us in different neighborhoods to actually work together as business owners of one entity will be really interesting. But we have over 2,400 member owners now. The co-op is open to the public, so you don't have to be a member owner in order to shop at the co-op. In order to be a member, to be a member owner is to be a part of the operations of the co-op and joining committees that pretty much govern the co-op. So it's pretty cool. It's just a pretty cool experience all the way around.
Okay. Can you talk about Akil? Oh, go on.
I was going to ask, can you talk about a little bit about the cost to become a member owner? I know that I'm paying $20 a month, but I forget like how much the full amount is.
$200 for a lifetime.
All right, there we go.
So you'll be done
$200 for a
soon.
lifetime, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm paying my $20 too. I might be done. But Akil, you're the general manager, right? And you were recently appointed, I think, because I'm a member of the co-op and I follow all the news on Facebook. Can you talk about where you're getting your food from?
Oh, man. Because this is such a large project, we have to lean into some of the national vendors. But our goal and our aspiration is to get as many local vendors as possible into the store. So we have 4 local farms, I believe, we're working with right now, as well as just individual vendors around the city.
Yeah, I'm excited about that because it seems like, local farming is so dependent on weather and some certain conditions and people coming out to the farm stand. I would imagine this would be more profitable for local farmers and they'd be able to reinvest that in their communities that they serve. Is that true?
Ideally, that's how we want it to be set up. We want everybody that is involved with this to profit. We're not trying to, for lack of a better term, we're not trying to rob our people to make a profit within the co-op. We want to make sure that anyone that is involved on a vendor level is paid what they're worth, what that energy and hard work that they put into their product is worth.
Because they have to pay their farmers, or the people who work for them, right? And they have to pay all of the cost of creating the food. So even if they're not charging a whole lot of money, just having consistent income, I would hope, would make a difference.
Yep.
That's, the dream, right? And so there's some farms nearby. There's Oakland Avenue Farms. Are they part of it?
Yep. D-Town Farm.
D-Town Farms.
I forget the names of the 2 other farms. Baba?
You know.
Yeah.
I can't remember right off the top of my head. But Sister Aaron Cole and Brother Magnetic on the east side, I think it's Saving Our Seeds, I think is the name of theirs. And then on the far west side, Brother Travis Peters, the Green Boots Project.
Green Boots.
Awesome. I'm excited about that. And then what about local black farmers in the near area? Because I know there's some farmers in Michigan who are not based in the city of Detroit. Are they also contributing to the inventory?
Definitely. The goal that we have is to start off with the farms in the city, then branch out to any black-owned farms within the state. So
wonderful. Yeah. Now, the food co-op is in the building, but the food co-op is only one part of the commons, right?
Correct.
And so who's overseeing the commons?
That fine gentleman right over there.
I see him
for the next couple months.
Oh, that's cool. So the commons is bigger is bigger than that, and I know you have cool offices. But how many kitchens are you going to have?
We have 4.
4. And
commercial kitchens.
As I recall, there was a little bit of a fight to put those 4 kitchens on the second floor. Or it was not a fight. It was just not done in the past. It was a kind of innovation.
Yeah, the city wanted us to put housing on the second floor, and we pushed back against that.
Okay. Well, I'm excited because commercial kitchens are so important to food production, right? Because if I'm trying to do anything but sell the fresh food, talk about the importance of the commercial kitchens and what you imagine happening there.
For me, I believe that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for local vendors to come in, be able to operate. A lot of local vendors are operating out of their kitchens.
Yes.
And there's a lot of legal ramifications to us dealing with people who are bringing in product that they're making inside of their homes. So having commercial kitchens for them to be able to come into, produce their food, bottle their food, or however they decide to merchandise their product, cuts out so much of that middleman and so many of those legal restrictions.
So now I'm not a food kind of person. I mean, I eat it, but I'm not a cook. I don't really like cooking all that much, but I know people who do. In my families, my daughters love to cook. If somebody wanted to be a food vendor, and they were not currently a food vendor, they just make really special things for family members and they want to move into that space. Is there a way for people to work with you, or do you see yourself partnering with anybody to help vendors develop their crafts?
Definitely. And I'm speaking a little bit out of turn because I'm over the co-op. But within, my power, I would love to have people that may need a couple of, steps to get to the point where they're retail ready.
Yeah.
And they come to us and they inquire about how to get from producing products in their house to actually on our shelves.
I'm going to have to tell my sister about that.
So right now I'm pointing people to the health department and other organizations here in the city that assist vendors with those preparations. But those are, the requirements of the health department, those are the preparations that vendors would need, even if they're utilizing the kitchens upstairs. And for the health department, having an adequate kitchen is one of the requirements.
Right.
So it definitely helps, but they have a long list.
I'm also looking at small business development, though, right? Like, how do I make money off of this? How much do I charge? How do I maximize my income? All those cool things that scare people out of starting businesses, because I would love to see this be an incubator for so much. But, my vision, I am a member, so I get to share this vision. I'm sharing it here for the first time. But Malik, what are your thoughts on this? I know you thought about all of this.
So, I was trying to lay back and not say much, but I'll just say, again, Akil made a distinction between the Detroit People's Food Co-op, the grocery store he manages on the first floor,
right,
and the Kujichagulia kitchens on the second floor, and also the Imani Hall, the banquet hall, which are run by Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network. So clearly we are trying to provide an opportunity for Black entrepreneurs, both new entrepreneurs to begin to get into the business and also existing entrepreneurs to scale up. But I'll say this, that you have to be ready to use a commercial kitchen.
Right.
And so Lanay spoke about one aspect of it, having the licensing from the health department, or depending on what you're producing, you might have to get licensed from the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. But also people need to have a business plan in place already. They need to have some commercial kitchen experience, some experience producing products. They need to have standard operating procedure. There's several things. So people are not just walking off the street saying, I want to cook, I want to rent a kitchen. There's some prerequisites. We thought initially about having all those wraparound services, but we don't have the capacity for it. So right now we're just referring people to other agencies.
Yeah,
that
we'd
can
love
help
to
them.
partner with you on that,
Okay,
because
great.
we do small business development, and it's such an important part. And I know so many people who have great ideas, and I want to see those ideas get materialized around these food systems, and no one organization can do everything. That's why there's partners here. I'd be remiss to not talk about all of the difficulties you had, because you had to raise a whole lot of money. I remember seeing this drawing a few years ago, and I want to hear about that journey from this vision, we're going to start this, to actually getting the finances in place to make this happen. And who helped you along the way?
Yeah, I know a lot of people want to hear about that, Bob. I'm okay with you. Yeah.
Yes.
Share, please.
I'm trying to figure out how to truncate this story, because it goes back to 2010, right? So we worked on this for going on 14 years now, and so I can't possibly give you all those details in 2 minutes. But I'll say the project the project cost about $22 million total. In 2020, just in the first 3 months of 2020, the project cost went up by $3 million at the beginning of the pandemic. Just when we thought we had raised all the money, then all of a sudden we got a gap of $3 million again. But I'll say that the money was raised primarily, the capital stack. I've learned to use that term in hanging out with people in the development world, as much as I hate capitalism. But the capital stack included about $6 million from local philanthropy, about $1 million in donations, including a very sizable donation from a former Detroit Lion, and the rest of it is debt financing, primarily new markets tax credits, but also some more traditional kind of bank financing. And so that's the short story. It took a lot of meetings, a lot of kind of massaging people. I'll say that bringing on Develop Detroit, who are professional developers, helped to bolster the confidence, I think, in a lot of the people in the financial sector. They know of Develop Detroit, know of its reputation, and I think that helped with the confidence of lenders. And so bringing them on board, having a solid team, it's having a solid team all across the board. architect, general contractor, people who are putting money up, they want to make sure you have all these elements in place and that you have a reasonable chance of being successful. So putting the team in place, including Develop Detroit, I think was essential.
So who's your architect?
We actually used two architects. And actually, Chase and I were just corresponding about this the other day, and I told him I was going to tell him the story when I had more time, so I guess this is the time. We started with Russell Baltimore, who was the design architect. Russell worked for a major white architectural firm downtown. Frankly, we were committed to black architects, and we're committed to spending black money on black vendors whenever we can within this project. So we wanted Russell Baltimore, but we didn't want the white-owned firm that he worked for.
Right.
Somehow Russell was able to arrange with the company he worked for him to do the project as an individual architect through his company while doing it on their time. And he was also able to bring in other black architects who worked at that firm to assist him. So they held a series of meetings with us where they tried to get inside of our head in terms of the design, the concept that we were trying to convey. And so we had several meetings dealing with colors, textures, music, and really trying to capture the aesthetic that we were looking for. And he did a great job. Russell Baltimore is what we call the design architect. But we partnered with another architect called Sims Design Group, which is called the architect of record. That's the architect who interacts with the city engineering, plant, building safety, interacts with the architect, interacts with the general contractor. Interacts with the general contractor, so on and so forth. So the architect of record is Sims Design Group, which is also a black-owned architecture firm. So we were able to get those two architects to work in conjunction with each other.
Oh, that just really touches my heart because I used to babysit Russell, number one. And Sims, founder of Sims Design Group, was a good friend of my dad. So I've known him like play father, whatever, since I was a kid. So it's great to see you working with people. I remember Russell was so excited about your project. He was like, look what I did, because we met, and he showed off. And so
yeah, Russell did a great job. One of the things that convinced me that he was the right person for this job was when I saw the socks he was wearing. Every time we would meet, Russell would come to the meet with these dope socks. All these Akil's sock game is tight too. I just want you to know. The listeners should know this, that Akil's sock game is tight. But seriously, Russell's socks were always, so he kind of embodied this forward-thinking aesthetic. It wasn't just in the building, it's like how he lives his life. So he was the right person for the job.
It's being detail-oriented in that way, right?
Yeah, detail-oriented, but also he just had this sense of aesthetic himself.
Some people have talked about the fact that the aesthetic is not really European aesthetic. And I think that was important. The colors are not European colors. You didn't get your typical beige and gray building up there. And I was really excited about that. And I know Chase has a question, but I just want to point out one thing. We had Tasha Tabron on from Kresge, and she talked about why your project was so exciting for her and such a fit for her. And one of the things she talked about was the fact that you had not only found a GC and an architect, but you had raised so much money on your own before you came to philanthropy to help fill it in. And so you had documented your willingness and your ability to leverage the community in supporting it. And I want people who are listening to this to think it's not just getting an architect, it's also being able to demonstrate there's a wide level of community support for your vision. So hats off to you for being able to make that case. And I know people who supported were really excited about supporting it. They didn't just support it. It was like a bragging point. Look what I did. So a lot of joy.
I was going to shout out to Russell, too, because he did the same thing for a project that we worked on. So it was similar. He understood this is a black project. We want this to be designed and feel a certain way. And he led us through that same kind of thing. So he's definitely a great architect. I wanted to ask a question about costs on the food co-op side. So maybe Akil. Mm-hmm. One, will the co-op accept SNAP benefits? And two, I think that a lot of people think that fresh food has to cost a lot of money, like some of the other competitors in the market in Detroit. How do you think about setting costs that are approachable for Detroit residents?
We definitely will accept SNAP. Okay. To start off. We just, the city has a lot of regulations in place for obvious reasons. You can't apply for SNAP until a month before opening your doors. Mm-hmm. So we literally just applied this morning.
Congratulations.
So yeah, we have that in place. In terms of pricing, it's twofold because we want to give our community the most affordable product possible. We also want to give our community the highest quality product possible. Typically, those two worlds don't mesh. They don't exist together. And also, in dealing with local farms, Black-owned farms, we want to make sure they're paid what they're worth. So it's been an undertaking between myself and our interim general manager, Chris Dilly, and the vendors that we're working with, and also the Black farms we're working with, getting them to kind of understand what our vision is for what the co-op's pricing points will be, but also, understanding the landscape that we're in, especially with produce.
But you're not going to have plum market prices, right?
In some areas, our product will mirror the Whole Foodses and the plum markets.
They're not on the same level. Plum market is ridiculous. Whole Foods is not. Yeah. To me, I was going there. It's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
I think there's just like a name. You get the name Plum in front of it. But because I think it's important. I think also it's important to understand that fresh fruits and vegetables and fresh foods don't cost as much as they do when they're canned and prepared in other ways, do they?
See,
but here's another.
It's such a nuance to that.
Well, here's another question. Have you talked to Charles Walker at Fair Food Network? He's my board chair, so I got to ask that question. I'll get in trouble because Double Up Food Bucks would help people afford those prices, right?
That's another program that we're looking into.
Yeah, so I will definitely.
Charles Walker was actually on the hiring committee that interviewed Akil.
That's right.
And selected him as the general manager.
Okay, so definitely you don't need his connection because you already have it. But great guy, and I think it's a great program to incentivize people, purchasing.
Definitely. But just to go back to what Chase was saying, the ability to get our people quality food, for me, is the number one priority. And us figuring out that pricing point to make it, both affordable for the community, and also us being able to give our Black farms that we're getting our product from the fair price for their product.
Can I add one more thing to what Akil said? He didn't mention that is that the people who work in the store, we want to pay them fairly too.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, and so we're trying to hold all these things simultaneously.
Yep.
Pay the farmers fairly, pay the workers fairly, have a state-of-the-art store, and try to keep the prices affordable. It's a very difficult equation.
I think, at the end of the day, you're not going to be making profit, and you're not going to be distributing that profit to shareholders. And the shareholders are not going to be driving. When I talk about profit, I'm talking about private, for-profit organizations making profit that they then distribute to their shareholders, and therefore they drive prices down.
But kind of, sort of. Let me say this. So we have 2,500 or so member owners, and in any year the store is profitable, the member owners can get a profit. It's not like a shareholder, a corporation.
That's what I mean.
But the store can be profitable. In fact, that's why the Detroit People's Food Co-op is not a 501c3, because it can potentially be profitable.
But it's not. It's a cooperative profit. It's not the shareholder profit.
Yes, exactly.
Because shareholders, when they engage in profit, shortchange quality, shortchange workers, shortchange all of the things that we care about in order to get there. And so I think that's what I mean. And so the language gets really confusing when you have excess income that you're distributing and profit that you're trying to drive. So many things when we're trying to drive profit end up being inhumane, but then we're back to capitalism, right? And this is a non-capitalistic form of helping to recirculate money. If there's other terms we can use, it's just important to me to differentiate and help people understand that this is really intended to support the farmers, the workers, the vendors, and when there's extra after you're supporting those people fairly, then there may be some distribution.
So I'll tell you one other thing that has really helped us out is that the co-op has joined a national co-op of grocers. So we're all able to put money together to leverage, our buying power. So I think we're like $2 billion of buying power across all of these co-ops across the nation. so that we can get really good deals on food. So we're not buying food like an independent grocer. We are a part of a national cooperative of grocers.
Super important.
Super important.
It's a really important detail, and that's exciting because we're part of a national movement, right?
Absolutely.
Which brings me to my final question, and that is that the Detroit Black Food Sovereignty Network is not the only food sovereignty network. It's part of a national network of food sovereignty organizations, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're one of the co-founders of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, and we have a cohort of about 15 Black-led co-ops across the country who meet monthly, and we contribute to that, but also I think in many ways they see us as being kind of the shining star right now, and many of those other co-ops are looking at us, so we're kind of creating the template, I think.
I think it's so important that people understand that Detroit creates more than Motown and automobiles, that we have so much innovation here, and we've actually exported so much of our genius to the world. I'm so proud of us and really proud of you for the work that you're doing. Proud to be a member. Can't wait to shop there, and I can't wait to go to the opening on May 18th. What time?
Opening on May 1st at 11 a.m.
The grand opening.
Grand opening on May 18th.
Okay.
At 11
So
a.m.
that celebration at 11 a.m.
All right. So I want to thank you all for joining us. This is a really exciting, event happening in our city. Chase, do you have any last words?
No, I'm excited as well. I'm glad to be a member. I want to see this template replicated throughout the city, right? I think that's probably one of your goals too, right? Like this can't just be one flagship, but how do we get this in other neighborhoods? So I know a lot of geographies in the city are probably looking at this saying, this is great that this is in the North End. How do we expand this throughout Detroit?
So it'll be up to the member owners.
All right.
So we say to the member owners all the time, if you want to duplicate this, then you have to vote on how the profits will be spent. Are we expanding the store? Are we opening another store? This is an awesome kind of experiment, I would say, where you have all of these different people, again, from all these different neighborhoods, different ethnic backgrounds, and with Black leadership coming together to make decisions on what this can be.
Thank you. All right. So it's time for shout outs. Any shout outs, Chase?
So sticking with food, I'm going to shout out a wonderful, wonderful woman, Idrit Goudia, who Chef E.
That's my sister.
Okay.
Folks might not know this. So working on a real estate development project on the West Side, we had a tenant that turned out not to be who will be our ultimate tenant. So we've been out looking for a tenant, and Chef E has been amazing connecting us to people throughout the city, throughout the region. So I could not do the work that I do without her.
Chef,
Awesome.
Idrik is also one of our board members, and she is always taking care of us, connecting us.
On your board
Okay,
over there.
well, not everybody, because I have room for more people. So before you say
Be
that,
careful what you ask.
you don't know me that well. You have no idea. But no, she does such a great job connecting us to so many opportunities. Wonderful person. What about you, Lanay?
So the Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund, it is an organization that assists Black Detroiters in acquiring land to grow food on, and gives a lot of direction with Keep Growing Detroit and a lot of other organizations that really help those who want to grow food on their land. The Detroit Land Bank has all those side lots and neighborhood lots available, and the Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund can really help to acquire that. And again, in partnering with Keep Growing Detroit, help potential farmers or aspiring farmers to create their business plans, learn how to garden, learn how to grow. It's just an absolutely phenomenal program.
Okay, Akil.
I'm always going to shout out my mom.
Okay.
I love that.
Love my mom. But one of the people that got me into this position that had, a tremendous influence on me eventually meeting I won't say it. We got an inside joke about something, but I won't say it. Who got me or introduced me to Baba Malik was someone who I consider a little brother, Jermaine Booz. He is well known within the city. He works very closely with Chef Idrik. Just a really positive, uplifting guy. He moved here from Arkansas when he was 18 years old to go to Eastern Michigan, made his way into the city's landscape, into the food world, and he just got such an impact. And, you know, I just wanted to uplift him and give him tons of praise.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I give a shout out to my comrades in Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network, the board members, the staff, and the 120 or so members that we have of the organization.
All right. And I'm going to give a shout out to my uncle, Ronald Llewellyn McIntyre, who passed away just a couple months from his 90th birthday. He was my mother's youngest sibling, the little brother who was like a big brother to everybody. He was the first black engineer at Detroit Edison. He retired after 25 years to become a full-time deacon for the Catholic Church and retired at 82 years old. And he was an amazing man, one of the best human beings I've ever met, who gave and demonstrated what it was like to be a good person. I tell my husband all of the time, because of my uncle, he was the man I was looking for. So I really honor you, Ronald McIntyre. Thank you for all you've done for our family. And with that, we're going to end. If you have any topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. Thank you, and thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.